Thank you very much, Chairman of tonight's proceedings, Lady Vice Chairman of the PNM, Mrs. Camille Robinson Regis, Party Chairman Mr. Franklin Khan, Deputy political leaders, other party officers, candidates, councillors, residents of Morvant, Laventille, visitors to Morvant, Laventille. Tonight, I feel like I've come home again. Because I don't know how many of you know that I spent a lot of my formative years growing up in Laventille and in Morvant. Those were the days when Laventille and Morvant were the city of lights for a boy from Tobago. Coming from Mason Hall in Tobago and arriving in Laventille, and I could easily have arrived in New York. And then as my mother shared her home with me in 12 Cosmo Street, Coconut Drive, these streets were my stomping ground. Matapal Street, Taproot Street, the cinema in Morvant, a girlfriend in Second Caledonia, and going to late shows at 11 in the night and walking home at 4 o'clock in the morning and nothing on your mind but love. But the future of young people is so different now, and the situation has changed so much that if a young man does that today, nothing on his mind but crime. Our country has changed, and in many ways not for the better. And that is why we have to treat this period and the assignment given to our managers with the greatest seriousness. I've been accused of many things. One of them is that I'm too serious. That is true. I'm serious. I'm serious about the state of affairs in Trinidad and Tobago. And my understanding of national management is that it takes serious leadership to guide and govern a serious country and a serious people. And that is the basis on which I offer myself to you in Morvant, in Caroni, in Tobago, in Point Fortin, and all over Trinidad and Tobago. You know, the government of any country has a responsibility to treat with the issues of the day, whatever those issues are. That is the work program of the government. So in 2010, when we had a serious crime problem which impacted very seriously on the quality of life of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, during that general election, those who offered themselves as alternative to the PNM, holding out the hope and the prospect for a better life for the people of Morvant, Carenage, Toco, Enterprise, San Fernando, that we will treat comprehensively with the crime problem in Trinidad and Tobago. That was their assignment. Today I can tell you, as of June 30th this year, 201 persons have ceased to exist in Trinidad and Tobago as a result of violent exit. June 30th, halfway through the year. And of course, if you add those from July to now, the same pace continues unabated, not even making the news anymore. And those who are responsible, instead of allowing you to mark their scorecard on how miserably they have failed, they're bombarding you with all kinds of niceties for the election season, hoping to get by this season. If you make the mistake and put them back in office, the same thing that you enjoyed for the last 5 years will continue because they would have crossed the hurdle of accountability. Is September they're coming? 7th of September? You know that we're coming on the 31st of September. So now they're coming on the 7th of September. Okay? But on the 8th of September, the morning after the election, if you wake up to the same arrangements, your life would be the same and possibly worse. What these elections offer you are new opportunities to choose new candidates, new managers for new opportunities for the prospect of doing better. That is what September 7th holds out to you. So we had a crime problem. And you know, good governance matters. If you don't have good governance, your problems can remain intractable and your quality of life will not change for the better. So in 2011, you know what happened? We bought a jail. Remember that story? One of the achievements of this government is that they bought a jail for $300 million in Santa Rosa. Remember that? But what is today's news? Today's news is that there's an explosive condition in the prisons of Trinidad and Tobago where our prisons are in fact hellholes where any morning you could wake up and there are conditions in the prison which threaten national security in a way that didn't exist in 5 years ago. It has got worse. We've spent the money, but how did that change the problem? $300 million of additional jail space. You have to ask yourself, how and why did that expenditure not impact on the conditions of our prisons? Because those who are managing our affairs don't care. They believe that they could allow these things to fester. They believe that they could appoint ministers left, right, and center. How many ministers of the prison have we had in this 5-year period? You can stop counting. How many national security ministers we've had? 5. What conditions have changed in the jail? It has got worse. Under this government, earlier in their tenure, there was a conflagration in the prison and the threat was great. They sent in investigators under Professor Diosaran to go in and do an emergency assessment. We thought that this will bring the government to treat with the issues in the prison. What has come out of that? Absolutely nothing. Today, the $300 million prison sits up there in Santa Rosa, and the owners of that prison who couldn't even rent it as a dance hall or a storeroom are multimillionaires today. People in the government are multimillionaires today, but the prison condition has got worse. And I'll tell you something else too. I will tell you something else too. Mr. Hines spoke about the coming into being since election day of the party of the third, led by a former senator. How many of you in this audience had come to Port of Spain for that march on Section 34 when we marched on the president? I know that you were there. Because we woke up one morning and the Guardian advised us that the government of Trinidad and Tobago, under the watchful eye of Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, the fifth one, had authorized the president to extract a clause, a very curious clause, which had caused us some concern in the parliament when it appeared in the law. The prime minister authorized that on Independence Night, when we were watching fireworks, that the president should proclaim that clause, and the singular effect of that clause was to create the opportunity for 2 government financiers charged with criminal conduct to escape the courts in Trinidad and in the United States. So outraged were we when we discovered that in the Guardian, that I gave you 24 hours notice to meet me in Port of Spain, and you came out in your thousands, and we marched upon the president. And I went to President's house with you behind me. It rained on that day, you remember? I took into President's house a bag on my shoulder like a farmer with pages upon pages upon pages of your signature. Some of them wet by the rain. And I said to the president, who was the acting president then, the said Timothy Hamilsmith, I said to him, President, Your Excellency, I would like you to conduct an investigation into how this cabinet note got to the President Maxwell Richards to cause him to have proclaimed that clause. Investigate the entire process and tell us how this happened. Because Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa and her government had given the parliament the assurance that no such thing will happen. And then the president wrote me a letter under secret and private and confidential cover. Meaning, I'm talking to you, but don't tell anybody what I tell you. And he said to me then, in that situation where government could have so misconducted itself, the president wrote me then, the acting president, and said, I have investigated the matter, looked at all the documents, and conducted the investigation as requested. And these were his words to me. I have found nothing out of the ordinary. In other words, there was nothing for anybody to account for. That was the finding of Mr. Timothy Hamilsmith, acting president, who wrote me in defense of the UNC government, of which he was very much a part. However, that being so, within a matter of 24 hours, I got a copy of the said cabinet note, which he was supposed to have investigated and reported to me that he has found nothing out of the ordinary. But when we got the cabinet note after that statement, guess what the cabinet note contained? The cabinet said to President Richards, in asking him to proclaim Section 34, that it is required that this be done to appoint masters of the Supreme Court. That is one of the biggest lies ever put in a cabinet note in Trinidad and Tobago. They duped the president, telling him, proclaim this clause, because it is required to appoint masters of the Supreme Court, which was a requirement of the Omnibus Law. When in fact, if in fact they wanted to appoint masters of the Supreme Court, what had to be done was an amendment to the Supreme Court of Judicature Act, and not the proclamation of Clause 34. The Prime Minister is a senior counsel. Mr. Hamilsmith is a lawyer of great repute. Prakash Amadar was chairman of the parliamentary committee overlooking all of that. All of them lawyers. And they want us to believe that that was an accident. And even when he investigated the matter, when tens of thousands of you were on the street, he then tried to dupe me, to tell me on your behalf that he has investigated the matter and he has found nothing out of the ordinary. And that being so, the next thing we knew, a minister of government was fired for the thing. Volney was fired. And then the Attorney General had questions to answer. And then the Prime Minister was telling us untruths that Angan Ramlogan was not in the country when it happened. And so on, and so on, and so on. The Parliament had to meet in emergency session to repeal Section 34. But nothing out of the ordinary was seen by Mr. Hamilsmith. And worse, after the two financiers got their benefit, because the law existed for a few days, and they went straight to the court as if they knew it was coming, the government repealed the entire law, mission accomplished. You know what the law was? The law was the Administration of Justice Bill. And you know what was the purpose of that law? It was to eliminate the backlog in the courts and to treat with the problem which is exploding in our face today in the prisons of Trinidad and Tobago. The government abolished the law and has left the situation the same because they came to the parliament purporting to be treating with the national problem, but all they were interested in was creating the loophole for Ish and Steve to escape. And once they escaped, the government came to the parliament and abolished the law. And the prisons are where they are today. And today I heard the most horrendous, unbelievable story. That there are people in our prisons on remand yard who have been there for over 10 years waiting for the case to be tried. There was one individual who was mentioned today who has been there for 14 years waiting for his case to be heard. People of Trinidad and Tobago, that is the problem which the government of Trinidad and Tobago was hired to fix. That is the problem that the law was passed in the parliament to fix. They insert in the law section 34, they release their financiers. And Mr. Hamel-Smith tells us he found nothing out of the ordinary. Birds of a feather flock together. 2 weeks ago, he was offering his services to the UNC in any position. In fact, as I speak to you now, he is the UNC's point man on the Procurement Legislation Implementation Committee. But out of the blue, after the election is called, he forms a political party to help the UNC. How can you trust these people? How can you trust any of them? On one hand, you have the UNC that passed a law under those circumstances, that spent $300 million virtually wasted, that put the interests of two people above the national interests. You have a man telling you now, I have resigned from the COP. When did he resign from the COP? When the 5-year term of the parliament came to an end. After the parliament dissolved itself, he resigned from the COP. And after the election is called, he now forms a party. And you know what that party is about? It is an admission that the COP is now useless to the electorate. So he has resigned from them. It is also an admission that he dare not stand on a podium like I am doing now and ask any COP supporter or any citizen to vote for the UNC because the UNC is hiding from its own name. When last you heard the Prime Minister speak about the UNC? She's hiding behind the rubric of People's Partnership. And they break up, they mash up Israeli People's Divorce. But she's hiding behind that, ashamed of her own organization, to the extent that the man who formed it, Basdio Pandi, is saying he can't recognize the UNC. That is not the party he formed. That is Kamla and the Cabal. But they believe that the many tens of thousands of persons who took the opportunity in 2010 to try something, to remove the PNM and give others the opportunity to do better. And we can't argue with the electorate for that. And we in the PNM, we are accustomed to that. Because in our 60-year history, the only 3 places in this country where the people have not sometime in that history voted against the PNM when they were not happy with us was Bukulambo in Tobago, Laventille, and San Fernando East. In every other part of the country from time to time, when our supporters are not happy with what the PNM is doing or would have done, they voted the PNM out of office, and we understand that. But they have a different approach. He now forms a party to be able to siphon those persons away who are now seeing the PNM as their option as against the UNC non-option. And that is the deceit and the deception of that thing. So tonight, I want to ask Mr. Hamel-Smith when he speaks tomorrow as leader of his new party, whether he still believes that the Section 34 scandal was nothing out of the ordinary. So he launched a party on 2 fingers, because you know 1 finger is obscene. So he launched a party on 2 fingers. One is on procurement legislation, and the other one is on campaign finance. Procurement legislation. And guess who is his partner in this party? Carson Charles. Carson Charles, who is head of NIDCO. So they are now the champions of procurement. I want to ask Carson Charles tonight and the UNC, who's sponsoring them, how did the highway to Point 14 move from $2.5 billion to $7 billion? How did the budget for land acquisition move from $475 million to $1 billion? How did you manage to construct and threaten the award of a contract where 2 contractors, one with a very bad bid, one with a very expensive bid, and somewhere in NIDCO, Carson Charles has found a way to join the 2 contractors and now threatening to give them the overpass to build in Curep? What procurement process was involved in that, Mr. Charles? And when Junior Minister Stacy got a fit of truth and reported that Minister Rambachan was interfering in the evaluation process for the award of the same contract, was Carson Charles interested in procurement then? But they want to form party on that. And of course, we are weeks away. I think somebody said we are now, what, 8 Sundays from election? 9 Sundays from election? And this new party that they're coming with to try and fool you, to split votes away from the PNM, they are the champions of campaign finance reform. What do they expect? And interestingly enough, you know, somebody on the radio asked Mr. Hamel-Smith, will you show us open your books to us? Since this is the fundamental principle of your party, open your books to us and tell us who is funding this new party. He said, I can't do that. I only want to talk about campaign finance reform. But if I show you who is funding me, I will give the other side an unfair advantage. And the reason why he can't stick with the principle he started out with in the party is because he cannot show you that their operations are being funded by the UNC. I tell you all of this here in Laventille and all of you listening at home so that you will know the kind of games and tricks they're playing. And especially you young people across Trinidad and Tobago. Now is the hour when your future is in your hand and you are required to take responsibility for Trinidad and Tobago. Begin to show responsibility by accepting that you start with that responsibility of choosing who will govern the affairs of state in Trinidad and Tobago. And when you set out on that responsible course, just inform yourself, if you haven't done so already, that character matters and good governance makes the difference between your success and your failure, and your family's success and your family's failure. And those of you who believe that there's no role for you, I say to you tonight, there's a very important role. And there's no need and there's no purpose to getting angry or getting stressed. Just get active in the election campaign. Get active as a voter and cast that ballot for the People's National Movement. You have 15 more days. Those of you who have not yet registered yourself, check the voters list, because after the 23rd of July, you can no longer get your name on the list. And with your name not being on the list, you would have given up the right to choose who governs Trinidad and Tobago. A lot of tomfoolery is taking place now out of the blue. Out of the blue, the country is now being governed by colors. They tried before and it failed, you know. Many of you here in Morvant, Laventille, Laventille East, Laventille West, you were called down to the Hilton Hotel by the said Prime Minister for color me orange. Remember that? Your future, your children's future, your opportunity was color me orange. Well, color me orange generated a number of millionaires, and all he got was an opportunity for a picture with the Prime Minister at the Hilton. Remember that story? Now you're going through the whole spectrum of colors. All kinds of gimmicks. All kinds of subterfuge. And scandalously using the public sector, CNMG, and the state information budget to campaign for the UNC. Thinking that they can fool you. As I speak to you now, we have reports about government ministers handing out cash in the eastern counties and in the deep south. And people of Trinidad and Tobago, you have to ask yourself a simple question. Where does a minister of government get hundreds of thousands of dollars to give away so as to get him or herself chosen to represent you in the parliament? If you had any doubt that there were people of dubious character, they are providing you with the proof, because if they will do that before they get into government, God alone knows what they will do when they get into office. As Lloyd Best would have said, when people come to you like that, them is people to watch. They're telling you all you need to know. Because for the last 5 years, not only have they failed spectacular on that #1 assignment of improving the security of Trinidad and Tobago, but they failed in every other area of responsibility. Today, they will show you that we built at this or we built at that. Well, we don't begrudge any citizen in this country getting from the government what the government has to offer for the development. You deserve it. You deserve it. But you have to ask yourself, compare what they are showing you of their performance against the price tag of $400 billion. And ask yourself, where in your community did a $400 billion national expenditure change your life, your family's life, or your children's life? Where did it change the economy? You spent $400 billion and the economy is still in the doldrums. Everything you put your hand on created a problem. There was nothing wrong with our foreign exchange distribution system. You put your hand, pick man in the central bank, and if you want $5 now with US in the bank, you can't get it. The opportunities have not been created in the economy, which should have grown to absorb our young people who got themselves trained and qualified, and today the best they can look forward to is an OJT job. Not the sparkling opportunities that the PNM held out for them in an economy that would have grown in Wallerfield, would have grown in La Brea, would have grown in Port of Spain. Instead, what they have done is to have deliberately run down the city of Port of Spain. Your opportunity here in Morvant, Laventille, to grow with the city, to get employment opportunities, to provide services and skills and so on. Port of Spain is now a dying city by deliberate government policy and program. And they're telling us of the PNM that we are only concerned about Port of Spain. Our record will show that we have always been concerned about the entire Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why I could have moved from Mason Hall to Laventille, to Morvant, to Diego Martin, to this podium tonight, and to offer myself as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. PNM policy from 1956 to 2015. Morvant, Laventille, you are the residential districts, the suburbs of the city of Port-of-Spain. And if Port-of-Spain is unhealthy, your communities will be unhealthy. And if Port-of-Spain is dying, then you will not have a good life. Tonight here in Morvant, I give the people of Morvant, Laventille, and the nation the assurance that under a PNM government, we will ensure that the city of Port-of-Spain does not die, that it will be rehabilitated, and it will be a city of which every person in Trinidad and Tobago can be proud to acknowledge as the capital city of the proud nation of Trinidad and Tobago. A city is an economic unit. It requires certain inputs. And most of those inputs have been coming from Laventille, Carenage, Diego Martin, and Rung. So when you kill Port-of-Spain, it's a whole series of communities that you're killing off. And there's no need for that. You don't have to pull down Port-of-Spain to build up anywhere else in the country. We can all rise on the same tide of good governance. And you don't have to stereotype the crime problem in Laventille, because the criminals are no respecters of any communities. They will get us on their terms whenever they want. We have to respond by having in place the proper state arrangements to respond to criminal conduct in an effective and efficient way. When Bill Clinton was coming in to run for the presidency of America as an outside candidate coming out of Arkansas, the United States as a nation was in a similar position to what we are in today. Chicago, New York, LA, Louisiana, they all had serious runaway crime problem. It was a national malaise. And Mr. Clinton, one of the main planks of his campaign, in fact, it was the economy and security. And he said he will put 100,000 more policemen on the beat in America. Because as Mr. Hines told you earlier on, visibility of that uniform in communities play a great part in keeping the community whole and giving confidence to people that somebody is in charge. 100,000 policemen he put on the beat. And that was the beginning of the rolling back of the criminal invasion of the United States. Today we are in that same position. And while we are not offering 100,000 policemen, we are offering at least 100 policemen per corporation additional to the national police. The law exists for each corporation to have its own constabulary under the management of a leader at superintendent rank. Instead of hiring people and putting them there, and these local people will be in a good position to patrol your streets, to look in your window, to keep a sharp eye on the ne'er-do-well in the district. Instead of doing that, they're spending unbetold millions on something called comfort police that somebody created. And when you ask them, who are these people, they can't tell you. What powers do they have? They can't tell you. What are they doing? They can't tell you. Comfort police. But in true UNC style, somebody somewhere is earning millions of dollars supplying cars and those comfort policemen. And there's no accountability, no monitoring, just money flowing out of the treasury. I say to you, it is possible to spend large sums of money and not address the problem that it is meant to address. Whether it's the prison, whether it is the police on the beat, whether it is comfort police, whether it is laptops in the schools, you can spend large sums of money and not significantly impact on the problem you set out to solve. So tonight, I want to say to you here in Morvant, you all have a habit saying that PNM win already, so we don't have to vote. This is a PNM stronghold. I want to hear none of that. Those are the positions of people who are passing their responsibility onto other people. Rise up and take responsibility for yourselves. Let this be the first day of the beginning of a new style in these hills, where you will take responsibility. Take responsibility for yourselves, for your children, for your family, for your country. Take some responsibility. Do not relinquish that very important charge. So tonight, as the election draws nearer, I want to remind you, sisters, take your brothers to the polling station. Brothers, take your sisters to the polling station. Fathers, take your sons and daughters to the polling station. Mothers, take your daughters and your friends to the polling station. Neighbors, take your neighbors to the polling station. And come September 7th, let us as a people in Trinidad and Tobago take responsibility for Trinidad and Tobago. Let us bring back decency. Let us bring back good governance. Let's bring back hope. Let's bring back a future that gives the young people the best chance to survive under the current circumstances. And when you would have done that, looking at all that's on offer, the PNM and all the others, I put it to you here in Morvant tonight that you will come to the single, sane, and reasonable decision that Trinidad and Tobago has its best chance, its best option under the People's National Movement. We've chosen our candidates very carefully. We've selected them on their track record and their potential to do well in government. And most importantly, on their character as model citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. What more can we ask for? What more can we ask for? Don't leave Trinidad and Tobago into the hands of others who have demonstrated a cavalier disregard for the future of your children, your neighborhood, and for the country as a whole. So tonight, I want to thank you, Morvant Laventille, for your support for Fitzgerald Hines in Laventille West. And for your support and acceptance of Adrian Leons in Laventille East Morvant. And these two men will work with you and the nation to ensure that we remove from Laventille all the stigma that you have lived with over the years. We are in a new dawn in Laventille, under a new PNM leadership, in a new time in the People's National Movement and in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. Young people, you have a responsibility to stand with us in this endeavor. Your parents have taken us this far. Do not give up that responsibility to others who may not care about Trinidad and Tobago. So as we go forward to the general election, I'm asking you to take it seriously. There is no shame in being serious. There's comfort in knowing that serious people are available for serious situations, and we are in a serious situation. So I hear you on the night of September 7th, shouting from the hills of Laventille, from Mova, from Monrepo, from Never Dirty, and wherever you are in these parts, that you would have come out and supported our candidates. You would have supported our policies and programs. You will support our commitment to you, and we'll all shout, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and Trinidad and Tobago will prevail over all its challenges.